probably plenty. And I'll keep a little eye on the chat as well. So if you have any questions, feel free to throw them out in as they come up, and then we might just get to them at the end of the presentation.
Okay, thank you. So let's start the very first webinar of this COAST activity on Working Group 2, which is about policy and career development. As it was already mentioned, I'm Tibor Borbély-Pece, and what I'm going to introduce, as you can read it from the abstract, is a short overview of the history of career development policy at the international agenda. And then I'm aware that we have limited time here, so just as a short note, in the very beginning, the whole presentation was already pre-recorded, and then I can send you later the URL in the YouTube. So if anything will be missed right here during the discussion, then the detailed input is available already online. So when we started this activity, we already tried with one of the very first discussion meeting to highlight how career development, career guidance, or in the last 2 decades, how we call it within the European Union, lifelong guidance, policy and system design had been emerged in the international policy agenda. And as this is a scientific network here, I'm taking a very different approach. Hopefully it will work, or you are the ones in the call who can tell me if it works in the end or not. So here I want to highlight I have only 2 slides. Here I want to highlight more the theoretical background of career guidance, career development. I think this is a very narrow academic field, especially professionals are coming from the practice. Either they are pedagogists or psychologists. They are in a continuous fight with each other, pedagogists with psychologists in different countries, from Romania, Hungary, Germany, France. We can tell these very long stories since the turn of the 19th-20th centuries, how the psychological movements try to take away the guidance as a domain from pedagogy and vice versa. And I don't want to go into these academic debates which field is has more numerous background in that sense, but just agreeing on this, that at the moment in most of the countries, either we have professionals coming from the pedagogical or social work, social pedagogy as a field, or from psychology. And then obviously we have a mixture of those. Just starting with the point, I'm more like a pedagogist and not having a psychological degree. So how it's all started. So if we want to try to understand why career development policy is such an asset in modern human resource development policies, first we need to try to find a departure point in history. And I think the common departure point, as we all know, that those who receive training in this field, it's somehow in the turn of the 19th-20th century, the third part of the 19th century, what we call the industrialization, or in other ways we also name it as like the second industrial revolution, which has started somewhere in 1870, and the most around ended at the end of the First World War. And this industrialization came alongside with many changes, what we know from sociology, the literature of sociology. Usually the 2 main domains are industrialization and urbanization, and therefore vocations had developed, had emerged. So if we are going back to Frank Pearson's original idea in Boston in the early 20th century, there were almost no professions that time. So professions were very narrow, and most of the people find placement in the labor market as unskilled or maximum semi-skilled worker. So that time Pearson's idea of matching people with job was in a way pretty easy, because this differentiation in occupations was relatively rare. So it's also provided us a type of understanding why this profession originally was called vocational guidance. And if we are revisiting the very early papers of the different type of vocational guidance Congress in the United States of America, very early 20th century, then these papers are all were talking about the importance of helping young people and supporting the very basic school to work transition. So school itself in the turn of the 19th century, most of the industrialized states were very limited for most of the population, was only a few years. In case of Hungary, we started with 4 years compulsory education, and then only a few years were added as professional training. And even back in time, before the modern labor codes were deployed all around the industrialized countries, we had the apprenticeship law, as you can read in this slide. In Hungary, it was 1884 when the first law on apprenticeship was passed. And that time, vocational education was nothing else than a training, an on-the-job training, which was provided by the employers. So all of the history, all of the departure point of vocational education as such had started from this level. And vocational guidance was, of course, something alongside, a service alongside, which supported this transition from school to work or from rural areas moving to the cities. And when the first people arrived to the cities and they were not really established city dwellers, they tried to learn how to behave, they tried to learn how to find shelter and paid job opportunities without having any type of network. So that's why guidance itself was originally a very artificial type of activity. And then later on in the 1950s, this is how Carl Rogers called it, it's an artificial supporting structure, as we all know that. But already in this time, many of the features what we are still discussing right now in modern academic areas and in modern policy design were already emerged. As you can read here, some of the abbreviations are very highly used in different type of journal, the school to work approach. Then what we have been using more than since the 1980s in Europe, and the NEET abbreviation, not in education, neither in training, so socially inactive population, young population, or the ESL, the early school leaving as an issue. So nowadays in modern European standard, in European education area, we have like benchmarks for the ESL by 2030. All of the EU member states are planning to reduce the ESL rate down to 9%. But these elements, so how we are actually understanding the role of school, the role of apprenticeship, even though the next speaker is going to talk about the youth guarantee implementation in Romania, I guess, and there the needs, outreach, apprenticeship opportunities are very much highlighted by different type of umbrella policy documents of the European Commission. All of these phenomena are rooted in the turn of the 20th century, and all of these fundamental changes in the way of life and the labor market, of course. And still, that time, we time to time have these type of problems, either with high level of youth unemployment, like had started in Western Europe after the oil crisis in the 1970s, or the low level of job seekers, which is currently the issue in the European Union as we are aging, and from country to region in different type of period or in the timeline, we have this type of what from labor economics we call an imbalance between the supply and the demand side. So between the need of the employers and the need of the job seekers, the citizens. And the real issue is either we call it vocational guidance, lifelong guidance, career development, career coaching, and so on. There are several types of distinction in the same field. The issue remains the same. So supporting people, not only young people, but older generation as well, to find their way in the labor market, from the school system to the labor market, and between different types of jobs. And as I'm a Hungarian, probably I want to highlight a historical fact which is not commonly spoken in international conferences. it was not only the USA, but of course, this industrialization had happened all around the modernized countries, including that time was called the Austro-Hungarian monarchy, as you probably are aware of that. And in 1906, in Budapest, the first guidance counseling institute was already launched. If we check the Czech history, the Austrian, the Croatian history, the German history, we most probably would end up with very similar features. I think it's important when we are working together in international environment, not only highlight the Anglo-Saxon time frame of the profession, but also appreciating the heritage of different nations, different countries. And I have one more slide. As I promised, I'm going to be relatively quick this afternoon, which trying to address the critical angle. So in the title of the action, we are talking about the critical approach to career guidance. And then here I want to say a few words about the current landscape, or how at the moment I see the current landscape, and what are the key features which most probably shaping and reshaping our field. Starting just from the new millennium, we are talking about digitalization, we are talking about the social inclusion angle of career guidance, but we are also talking about a very unique European feature, what we call the flexibility. There is no time to really go into detail with that, but it's going back to the Danish history, the 19th century Danish history, which is a very Nordic feature, and the flexibility which brings together the flexibility of the labor market, but the adaptability of the citizens, the individuals, the job seekers, something when we pulling together the two elements of the labor legislation. I think it's partly the same, not fully the same, when we are talking about the United Nations, especially the International Labour Organization Decent Work Agenda. And then since the 90s, since the collapse of the USSR, we are facing with a very different type of global structure. Now new side powers are emerging, as the European Union is basically between the US and the Chinese economy. And we are talking about the digitalization. All of the literature are full with the role of the AI in the labor market. One of the next presentation going to address this. Even though some people are saying if this is going to be the right labeling or not, we're going to see it later. Now we are living in the fifth wave of the modernization, or which basically the outcome of the role of the changing role, the disruptive role of AI, climate change, and the geopolitical fragmentation after COVID. So why our field became so relevant? And then I think it's not enough to talk about the level of the practitioners, so career guidance, vocational guidance, rooted as a practice, as a role of the practitioner. But as we are talking about pedagogy, and we are talking about the role of the teachers, or as we are talking about social work, role of the social workers, we are also talking about educational policy, social inclusion policy. Therefore, we have to also address career development policy, which is an essential element of different types of policies, including human capital development. Again, by just highlighting a couple of important elements without going into details with that, the inclusive access for marginalized group, but also career adaptability as some type of skill where all Europeans need to be equipped. And then as we work together with the European Lifelong Guidance Policy Network for 10 years, from 2008 to 2015, this definition had been developed and then very widely accepted in different type of European policy document in employment policy, as well as in education and social inclusion policies. So when we are referring to CMS, then we are talking about the career management skills as an outcome, for example, in outcome of national core curriculum, outcome of the guidance intervention. So CMS is definitely something which empower individuals to develop career adaptability. What I'm highlighting here, that therefore career development policy, lifelong guidance policy, has a strategic role to play in modern economies and modern labor market and societies for certain type of reasons I'm not going to list again, but just want to use the last 2-3 minutes to highlight the critical element of our discussion. And as the action position paper will be published very soon, other elements will be available there as well. But my departure point probably would start from the age of the Enlightenment and trying to highlight the role of Rousseau, and then all the things he said and wrote about the social contract. So what is the contract between the citizens and the governments, and how all of the general will must come from the citizens' perspective, and even the lawmakers are not authorized to make decisions, but they are there to support the members of societies to develop their own sovereignty and develop their own way of life. So basically the rule of law, as we call it in modern age. And here I want to be very critical with an issue which is coming from also the literature of career development, when we are very strongly focusing on the measurement of career adaptability. Even I'm not going to name different type of researchers, but we have certain type of tools, questionnaires and tests. How can we check the level of career adaptability of individuals? And all of the guidance intervention in modern societies are focusing on the individual level. So how to empower them if I would be a social worker, how to teach them if I would be a teacher, or how to teach them to develop their own professional route if I'm a career guidance professional. But what is less discussed, and there are only a few documents and policy papers are available on this field. However, in the last 20-30 years, many of those were produced in the European level, in the OECD, the World Bank, the ILO, and many other international organization hosted the development of this type of paper. So what should be the balance between the role of the state, or states, or regional governments? So here we can call the state a member state, a regional government, or a local authority as well. So what type of supporting structure, lifelong guidance, lifelong development structures, they have to build around the citizens and the employers in order that they would be able to manage their career in a very segmented labor market where career transitions are eminently going to happen with us. So as the European average, Eurostat is making some type of argument on this, if I'm not mistaken by heart, average European citizens change job or a job position at least 7 times during a lifetime. So what are the responsibilities and roles of certain type of governments or the European Union or the UN bodies to develop and establish this type of structures? So what I'm arguing, that when we are having the 3 type of working group at the moment in the action, working group 1 is about theory, or working group is about policy, and the 3rd one is about the practice, then all of these elements should come together. And then it's not enough if we are discussing the changing nature, the changing role of career guidance as a profession serving the end user, serving the counsellors, but we also have to take into consideration what and how to do in policy design, redesign, and of course, policy evaluation. My last comment is, before I'm moving to the references of my today's speech, that it of course means that career guidance or career development or vocational development as a professional field and also as an academic field must be or have to be stronger in policy evaluation than we are currently. So after all of these decades, as I said, probably we can go back until the 1970s when the first policy documents arrived in this field. For example, one was issued by the International Labour Organization, and several followed this. But still, there are only a few academic professionals or researchers are really working in this field, which implies the combined use of sociology, economics, law, and psychology, and many other fields as well. So more or less, this was what I planned to say today, and I'm going to stop here. Also stop sharing my presentation, and I think if there are a few short questions, we can take the questions before we are giving the floor to Maria. Tony, please.
Okay, thank you. So you ended with thinking about the career guidance profession. So I was wondering if, like, for a continuation from that what do you see as key reasons why it has been kind of marginalized in between profession and doesn't have a kind of strong standing? It's kind of a semi-profession. What do you think? What are the reasons according to your estimation?
Thanks for this question. Well, we wrote a full article with John McCarthy about this. This is available in English. But my very short answer would be that it is marginalized once the social contract between the state and the citizen is not really taken into consideration. So even there are EU countries, for example, in France, there is a law passed by the French Parliament that all French citizens has a right to access career guidance services. But this is more like a theory, and then it's not really available in the practical level. So if citizens are not testing the availability of career guidance services, then we can draft the nicest law about that, but it's never became a practice. I think it's the same game like when you are testing your educational system in Finland, or you are testing your employment situation, which is now undergoing a serious reform in the Finnish case, or the healthcare system. So do we have a very clear understanding what we are expecting from career guidance? And then does citizen has a clear understanding? I'm very much afraid that after our work, which is now more than 100 years in vocational guidance, very often parents, teachers, headmasters, and so on, so different members of the society have a fake understanding what career guidance is. And they still believe that it's once in a lifetime testing. So before you are moving from primary to secondary, or moving to the university, or you are entering your first job, you have to meet with a counselor and you have to go through a certain type of testing. And then they are signpointing you towards different type of occupation. I think it's also a role of the professionals to change the understanding of the profession.
Thank you.
Great. If there are any more questions later on, we could always come back to that as well. But we might give the floor to Maria Carmen, if you want to go ahead. And just to say, I had some contact with Farid, and he is trying to get in, but is having some difficulty with just connections and all that. So hopefully be able to join us later on. So Maria Carmen, will I share the PDF, and you can just let me know when you want me to go through to the next page?
Hello, hi, thank you for having me. I just tried to share the PDF myself, as it appears that the PowerPoint is not supported by the new version of Microsoft Teams. I'm not sure if it's coming.
Not yet.
Not. Then could you please share it from your side?
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks. Thank you. My name is Maria Carmen Panta and I come from Romania. I teach at Babes-Bolyai University, and today I'm going to present a piece of work that I carried out last year and partially in 2023 on the Reinforced Youth Guarantee on behalf of Eurofound. Next slide, please. The presentation is part of a chapter that has been published last year in a book by Eurofound. However, what I'm going to present today is rather a process that uses the interviews that I carried out at the time with Public Employment Service Network staff members, with Reinforced Youth Guarantee coordinators, in order to make sense of what works, what sounds promising, and what does not really work in the employment measures addressed to the young people in need situations. So I would rather use Eurofound as a starting point for a broader reflection on youth employment policies and interventions. Next slide, please. I will briefly present what the Reinforced Youth Guarantee is about. So the Youth Guarantee measures started in the 80s in Nordic countries. They have been assessed as being very successful, and then the European Commission, in a context of the financial crisis 2008, started to think of youth guarantee as a framework throughout Europe. So we have the youth guarantee measures first launched in 2013, and then in 2020 a renewed engagement with this framework as the Reinforced Youth Guarantee in the context of COVID and as a measure of addressing the crisis and the recovery as well. So we would like to see the Reinforced Youth Guarantee as a framework that has many tools, and including active labor market policies, all aimed to ensure that young people under the age of 30 receive a good quality offer of employment, education, apprenticeship, or training within 4 months of becoming unemployed or leaving education. So this is the broader concept that fuels the Reinforced Youth Guarantee as a framework. It has a very strong focus on the hard-to-reach young people. It extended the limits of what a young person means. So we have now young people until the age of 30 and a commitment for having a process that is rather complex, carried out in 4 months' time. It is output oriented, so it means that states are not bound to several interventions as such. They are free to design the interventions measures that are likely to work in their own context. Even regions have this option. The European Commission is retrieving a rather small number of indicators in relation to the outcomes, but what is being carried out is a matter of decision at the regional and the national level. Thank you. The next slide, please. The Reinforced Youth Guarantee has 4 stages. So to start with, it's about mapping. Mapping the young people that are out of the labor market, mapping the services that are available, and maybe mapping the skills with a focus on digital and the green skills. And here we have a bit of a dilemma in relation to what green skills are about. Whether the Public Employment Service staff seems to have a reasonable understanding of what digital skills are about. There is appears to be quite an uncertain image over what green skills and green jobs are about. Also, mapping the young people that are out of the labor market and out of education is not a very easy task, especially given a cross-cutting problem in many European countries, that young people, especially young men, tend to fall through the institutional nets it is more likely that they are coming back into the statistics after the age of 30 in the context of additional issues related to child protection, for instance. But after leaving education, chances are that many young people are off the record across Europe. So mapping the young people who are not in education, employment, or training requires large data sets and very good coordination between various institutions. However, to add to complexity, much information is being collected at national level, whilst national level might tell a misleading story when being in a need situation is often a regional and even a local problem. So we might need to have a more territorialized approach to what being a person in need situation means. Thank you. The next slide, please. After mapping, the process involves outreach, early identification of young people at risk of entering need situations. And here the public employment services need culturally competent ways of reaching the hard-to-reach groups. Well, this has traditionally not been part of the services they offer, and it requires skills that are more into the social part of connecting to disadvantaged groups. So there are many interventions being proposed around Europe, proposed as good examples of good practice, but there is also a large process of outsourcing, of externalizing these processes to NGOs and youth organizations which step in and do the outreach work, however, not without trade-offs in relation to their initial mission. So we need NGOs mostly for the civic work and the civic demands that are now being posed on European societies, not necessarily as entities concerned with employability goals that are not at the hardcore of what NGOs and youth organizations are about. So we have a risk of mission drift for many non-governmental organizations that are stepping in to meet some employability goals of the moment, but with the risk of leaving aside watchdog activists, processes and civic education, non-formal education, and so on. Next slide, please. The 4 months clock starts to tick from the moment a person is being registered until that person receives an individualized offer. Well, the 4 months appears to be realistic for the young people that are occasionally out of education, employment, or training, but it's considered highly unrealistic for disadvantaged group, because work-first approaches might not work for the young people that have severe mental health issues, that face homelessness, disabilities, that have mental health problems, family issues, single mothers, and so on. So there is a need to see the situation of the young people outside education, employment, or training, also in social terms, because this is where the main blockages in entering labor market may be situated. So it might be that a work-first approach may not be what these young people really need at this time. So they might need social interventions or other forms of counseling surrounding employability concerns that are posed in such situation. And the public employment services face the pressure and the need to move from general understanding of young people unwillingness to act towards a shift in the mindset to their distressed capacity to act. So it's important to have this move from employability to the social problems surrounding unemployment closer to the understanding of what measures are appropriate. Thank you. The next slide, please. The offer refers to unemployment benefits and active labor market measures that have been a characteristic for several decades in Europe. So we have job search assistance, training, subsidized employment, startup subsidized, and various forms of support. these measures depend on the tradition that is embedded in the policies at the national level. So we have a strong focus on back-to-school approaches in Sweden and Estonia, where more recently the age for mandatory education was raised to 18. In Sweden, people until the age of 20 are being sent back to formal education. So we have formal education embedded in the notion of social justice very profoundly. In Romania, for instance, we have second chance education, which is a mix of people and the situations in what would be quite an under-evaluated program of second chance education. And we have apprenticeships in France and Germany, where also it appears that the retirement of the old employees that had been socialized into providing mentorship in companies is raising concerns over the sustainability of apprenticeship on the long term. A lot of the much energy is being spent in public employment services in bringing companies closer to the reinforced youth guarantee. Well, while companies seem interested in having young people employed, the reinforced youth guarantee is not there by default solution. So it appears that there is a lot of energy and effort being made in bringing companies closer to the offer of the reinforced youth guarantee and to simplify bureaucracy, administration, and all these elements of mutual difficulty that are being posed. Platform work seems to come high in among the difficulties in implementing the reinforced youth guarantee, and the sense of being 2 steps behind in terms of legislation, regulations, institutions. So the mixed work arrangements, the work arrangements of mixed quality that are being offered through platform work are not that much part of what the reinforced youth guarantee measures are proposed. Overall, in Europe, there is seems to be a transition from welfare benefits towards conditional provisions, so a decrease in welfare benefits without any obligations attached, and an increased understanding that employment measures work when they are accompanied by social services, notably childcare in disadvantaged communities and so on. So it's not only a matter of having employment benefits, but rather making the work rewarding and having the childcare and the social services that surround employment available. The next slide, please. So to conclude, the reinforced youth guarantee sends a public message on the importance of having young people closer to the policy understanding of employment. This is necessary in the context where the recovery and resilience plans in relation to the young people are strongly focused on education, and only 10%. Francisco Simoes is a researcher that analyzed the processes. Only 10% of the reinforced of the recovery and resilience plans are being allocated to employment measures for the young people. So we need an understanding, closer understanding of what employment for young people means and what is quality and decent employment. There are regional disparities, but we have national policies. So we have an unsolved tension in relation to to what extent the national policies are able to speak about local conditions. So we might build up an argument on the need to have a more territorial approach in relation to employment policies. Labor market policies are also about social policies, and employability comes surrounded with several social dimensions that need to be looked at. because work-first approach might not be the solution for many of the young people that are in need situations, and we need to consider the population in need situations in its heterogeneity. So we have here young people with disabilities, we have youth offenders, we have young mothers, people with disabilities, people with caring commitments, and so on. So there is a need to have a social understanding of the situations that prevent them, isn't it, from entering the labor market. The public employment services, the conventional approach has been built around the idea that we have to match young people with the services that are available. Well, a question now is to what extent the services that are available are indeed those that young people need, want, and so on. So we need more participatory approach in designing interventions and measures that work for the young people. Questions on the public employment services capacity are being are critical in the context also of outsourcing. To what extent is outsourcing an option, for whom, and to what extent this is decapacitating public employment services of being thoroughly reformed in the sense of being able, competent in dealing with the social issues that surround unemployment. What are the trade-offs of outsourcing, and what are the trade-offs also for those NGOs stepping into employment issues? Counseling with this motivational ethos might not be able and is not able to speak about the precarious work that is available around Europe. So what is the quality of jobs young people are being sent through, and why the turnover is there, and what it can tell about the quality of employment that is available, and also the post-placement support. It appears that some young people need as much as 2 or 3 years of a door open to the public employment services for some counseling along the way. So it's important to have a broader understanding of what interventions mean and where do they end. Thank you very much. The next slide would be with bibliography, and I'm happy for questions and to discuss this more. Thank you.
Thank you, Maria Carmen. Yeah, I might just start it. I don't see any other hands raised at the moment. I suppose a question that would strike me when I'm listening would be, to what extent is career guidance kind of a part, at least if not the answer, then at least part of the answer? And then if we consider it an important piece, then how do we convince policymakers that it's worth putting the resources in there? Because you refer to things like outsourcing, for example, and so how do you assure that what's offered there can be called career guidance? What sort of qualifications do the people have that work in those outsourced services? What sort of quality of service is actually provided? So it's quite complex. I suppose that's probably the challenge in trying to convince policymakers as well. But yeah, I'm not sure where my question is. It's just, I suppose, my observation. But would you see career services, does that come up a lot, even in terms of a key part of the solution, or what might help in different countries?
Thank you. Thank you. European Youth Forum has been very vocal in arguing that many of the, because of being results oriented, many of the interventions carried out under the Reinforced Youth Guarantee have this screaming effect of selecting the young people that are less disadvantaged and having the success stories more into focus, and not dealing with the hard to reach groups that have this whole ecosystem of problems attached. Career guidance, there are many non-governmental organizations in parts of Europe being focused on providing career guidance of mixed quality, because standards of quality in relation to career guidance, but for trainships for that matter, are now under debate, and there is a whole process of elaborating quality standards to measure what is being done in the name of good and so on. It appears that countries that have a legacy of career guidance, and Nordic countries where the youth guarantee was generated as a concept, they do it in a rather comprehensive way. So we have Ohjaamo in Finland, where even the issues related to addiction are now being embedded in what support for the young people outside the labor market means. So there is a larger understanding of what having what resilience means, and what having a sustainable intervention is about. They do integrate many of the components that are really needed by the young people. But otherwise, I would only have rather speculative and very contextualized images of what is being provided. For sure, the youth work community is very alert at the idea of being involved in employability processes. Whenever there are problems in Paradise, youth work is called in to do some work, because they have a closer understanding of young people's needs and what works there. But as Tristan Hooley wrote in one of his books, there are so many occupations, professions, semi-professions claiming legitimacy when it comes to career guidance, that it's a rather difficult process of trying to make sense of what is being done, what are the standards, what works, what doesn't, and when. I think that Abel has a question.
Yeah, hello. Thank you very much for
Yeah.
your presentation. It was really interesting to hear that. I just wonder that when you speak about participatory approaches to make public employment services systems reach out young people, do you mean at policy level, including different institutional stakeholders, or just one-off solutions of NGOs or very local, low-level stakeholders? I mean, what are the policy implications of what you have just mentioned about the need to reach out and change the format, how they get to the young people?
Thank you very much, Abel. Yeah, I know that you're working on Roma, so I will jump into an example on Roma. There is so much focus on having digital solutions and having this digital solutionism embedded in all the policies to reach to the young people. Well, it appears, of course, that for some groups, including Roma, digital solutions don't really reach out. So there is a need for a closer and look and a stronger mentorship component embedded in all the interventions with the young Roma. So the mentorship and peer counseling, co-careering in some way needs to be cultural competent intervention for this group, but digitalization might work for another. So having a European understanding of what works is not that much of a priority, but rather understanding local interventions as being European policy into action. So having a local response to what is, of course, a European way of looking at careers and life trajectories and so on. So I would, I see rather a concern for legitimizing various forms of intervening at local level, rather than having an overarching standards of what works. Thank you. Hope that it responds more than it adds to complexity.
Can I just quickly add a comment to the comment, if I may? So I think the question went to the direction, what is the management structure of public employment services? And as we know, in the EU, there are 32 very different agencies, and there are agencies which are based on tripartite mechanism. So the ownership, how the management actually structured. For example, in the neighboring Austria, trade unions and employers federation are in the governing board of the EMS Austria, and they are the ones who are also shaping this type of decision, how the National Youth Guarantee Program are actually structured. And there are agencies in the Nordic countries, but also closer to your destination in France, where they are using the end users customer group. So they are building up different type of let's so-called research centers, and then they are testing out different type of solutions. So it's not all the time designed by the ministries or the head office of public employment services. I think it's very rare in Central Eastern Europe as a tradition.
Indeed, Austria, the reinforced youth guarantee is rather advanced in implementation in Austria, Nordic countries as well, Estonia, smaller countries have a closer understanding of where the young people not in education, employment or training are. And so the public employment services are at different levels of preparedness and reform. So there is a lot going on in terms of reforming and incorporating more recent concerns in the public employment services, and to go beyond the matching model that has been traditionally closer to their way of work. The public employment service network is very active in that regard. Yeah. Thank you.
I'm just going to jump in with one more observation as well. I was thinking about the youth guarantee, and that came in, and thinking about what would have driven that as a European-wide sort of policy. And I'm going to be cynical and assume that that's driven by economy more so than the idea that we around social inclusion. And if that's the case, and we're looking at demographics, are we going to have a time in the somewhat near future where we'll get a 60+ guarantee rather than the youth guarantee? And then that's a whole new kind of level of effort. I know the adult guidance services in Ireland would have had a huge shift when the youth guarantee came in. The clients that were accessing the services changed immediately from servicing primarily 50+. That was a big age group that they serviced, and after that, it shifted significantly to, under 30.
Yeah.
So yeah.
You are touching upon one of the important elements of criticism that has been Eduardo Pastore said, why young people? What's the point of having young people? It's a political commitment, because one argument is that young people are out of education, employment or training. The rate is double than for the general population, but it's also very dependent on the economic conditions of a place. So unless you work unless you work at the way labor market operates and the job opportunities and what is the situation in economic terms, you cannot just fix the young people to fit into a structure that is already rather not generous with young people, with elderly and so on. So we can definitely build an argument on who's or what groups are in need of these interventions. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Any other questions for Maria Carmen? And it doesn't look like Farid is on the call, unless you are, and I just can't see you. No, and next up then we have Mira from Finland. see if she has joined. I think we were told there.
Yeah,
Oh, there you are.
I'm here.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Super.
I don't need to. Yep. I'm so sorry for being late. I missed the first presentation, but lucky to see Maria's, and I think that Maria's presentation kind of overlaps with us and our presentation. So I will make some comments to your presentation in ours. So would it be so that we will be the next one?
Perfect. That's great. Thank you, Mira.
Yeah. And I didn't hear the timing and the things like, do we need to share our presentation, or was it so that we cannot share?
You should be able to share. If you have a presentation, you can have a go. If it doesn't work, we can try from our end, but it should allow you to do that. And then we said roughly 20 minutes per presentation.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. I'll open the PDF so it will show as it should. No, I won't, because it's. Can you see only? Perhaps I'll take the.
No, that's okay. Yeah, we can see that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Or do you, Tony, have got a better view on your computer? You can also share.
I think that looks fine.
Okay, so we'll go with this. So my name is Mira Kalalahti, and I'm from the University of Jyväskylä, leading the career guidance and counseling research and teaching unit there. And Tony is my super best colleague there, a university lecturer. Would you, Tony, like to say something about yourself, or did you present yourself before?
No, I didn't. Well, I'm a university lecturer there and sociologist from background as Mira is. So we have a strong kind of a social science representation in our unit, I guess. We are training guidance counselors, this kind of a qualification training, and then master's program. Those are the main training tracks that we have.
And I think that we also do a lot of like guidance policy studies and I don't know, what would you call it, like sociology of guidance or something like that. So we have a strong societal perspective on many of our studies and teaching. And this particular article or draft that we are presenting is a co-authored work with Janne Varja, who is a professor of sociology at University of Helsinki, and Sanna Vehviläinen, who was a professor of guidance at University of Eastern Finland. So we have kind of put together different data and different analyses and tried to reanalyze the question of impact, which has been like bothering us for years. And we tend to see those things that Maria was talking about, but we also want to know like what does it mean for the practitioners of guidance counselors or guidance counselors in their work if they have these kind of different impacts or policy threats as we speak. How does it like affect the work that they are doing? So this is the core idea, but it's an ongoing article, and I would really like to discuss some of the things and perhaps the wording so on of this work. So the presentation is Threats and Entanglements, outlining the impact processes of guidance policies and practices. And I will explain what we mean by the threats and entanglements, and then Tony will talk about the findings more. So we try to recognize these kind of impact construction processes. So we talk about the understanding that different career guidance and counselors practices and policymakers have on the impact issues of career guidance and counseling. And we see impact as a socioculturally and discursively constructed phenomenon. So we look at discursive places or discursive ideas of these impact processes. So we do not seek to analyze the processes as such, but how these processes affect the things that we do when we work as a career guidance and counselors. And we also use this multi-level ecological approach, which means that we have different data sets from different levels of policies and practices. We have national level policymakers, and then we have practitioners, and we try to kind of put them or integrate them into one analysis and see what kind of processes they are talking about. So it's not just about our recognition of these impact processes, but also how they understand these impact processes and what they talk about when they talk about impact. So in practical terms, our interest lies in how impact processes are recognized and how these processes entangle. So that's the entanglement. And the research question is, how are the impact of guidance, policy, and practice interpreted and approached from the perspective of different actors within the career guidance and counseling field? And we have multiple sets of data, and they kind of represent, although we are not talking about generalizations, but they kind of represent different perspectives of actors in the field, what we call lifelong guidance, but that is also something that we can talk about, like what is the lifelong guidance policies as a whole in Finland. But we do have 10 governance level actors interviews, and they are like Ministry of Cultural Education and Employment. I don't know what it is them. Tony, help me. But anyway, the Ministry of Employment and something.
Economic activity or something like that.
Yeah, something like that. But anyway, so we have those, and then we have leadership level actors interviews, like 37 actors from municipal level, and it's 2 case municipalities, and then we have practitioners and group discussions, like 4 group discussions where 16 people interviewed. So we have tried to kind of reinterpret this data with the integrative strategies and kind of constructed 4 threads of impact processes, which we will talk about later. And then we have recognized the entanglements of these impact processes or these threads. And the methodology draws from Simola. We have been writing a book about education policies before, and we have used the concept of policy threads. So this is what we have been talking or trying to analyze in this too. So it's the kind of thematic formation that we are analyzing as policy thread. We kind of use these kind of language or concepts, and we try to conceptualize what kind of issues the interviewers are talking about when they are talking about the impact of career guidance and counseling. And then we think that these policy threads entangle in a way that, for instance, the practitioners may refer to policy thread that takes place at the national level. So these kind of different threads entangle in the work, and this is the entanglements that we are talking about here. And here are the 4 threads that we have been recognizing. And the first one is the one that Maria was kind of discussing, like what is the guidance for employability, like what we do at guidance and counseling always aims at employability. So guidance for employability is the first thread. And it is characterized by defining the impact of guidance through a focus on employability and employment outcomes. And then we have been seeking, because my perspective is on career guidance and social justice, I have been trying to understand like what is the impact that we are talking about when we are talking about social aims. And we have been trying to recognize this also from the data. But unfortunately, there is not that much talk about this kind of societal or empowering impact of guidance. And for some reason, it's really minor issue in the societal level. And then we have this guidance for individual development, which features descriptions of impact as linked to processual behavioral and development outcomes. Tony will talk about that more. And then guidance for individual agency, which is the perspective that diverges from the previous threads in a sense that there the impact is not defined based on external criteria, but rather on individual subjectives, experience, and sense of agency. So that is the fourth thread. And then we have tried to see how these entangle in the discussions and in the interviews. And the entanglements are the things that we are really like interested in the article, that we try to exemplify, like what effects it has that these kind of different aims for career guidance counseling make nodes or entanglements. And now Toni will talk about the entanglements more.
Thank you. So this is an ongoing process. Yes. So we as Mira described, these 4 threads. They are kind of running through all the kind of contexts, and they are interpretations of impact from different stakeholders' perspectives, and they are kind of recognizable as similar, whether it is a policymaker who is talking about impact of guidance or a practitioner. So with this picture, then we are kind of referring to these entanglements, so that we are interested in relationships between these different interpretations of impact, and usually there are kind of conflicts between them, and these different interpretations kind of call for negotiating what guidance is about. And it's not kind of across the field of lifelong guidance, it's not clear what it is about. So it needs to be negotiated. And this is what we can observe in our different sets of data, that this is going on, and there's a need to kind of make sense of guidance. So in that picture, these are quite represented in a kind of a similar weight, but obviously guidance for employability seems to be kind of dominating, and something that all kind of policymakers adopt and kind of see it quite a self-evident aim for guidance in a sense, but they too kind of problematize it a little bit. But for practitioners, it's very problematic. And we will show a couple of examples from the data. Can you change the next slide? So we have several of these kind of examples, but the first one is kind of it deals with national level policymaker data, and it's kind of it's an example of how kind of employment and guidance as guidance for employability interpretation kind of dominates over societal aims. So it's portrayed something that in the end we need to kind of be supporting, and it kind of removes other interpretations and aims. Next slide, please. So here I'm not going in detail into this, but there are examples that kind of the first one there by a national level actor from Ministry of Economic Affairs and Employment talks about kind of supporting individual situation as a whole, and taking up this kind of recognizing their concerns, but immediately there's the obvious kind of aim with this work, And then the second for employer promoting like placement in education or placement in the labor market. And the second one is kind of brings up needs of businesses in order for these like short-term solutions. And this speaker recognizes that this view that we don't need long education, but we need kind of straightforward like skills for jobs. It's the extreme. So there's kind of a recognition of that it's kind of one interpretation of this, but still something that they kind of adopt on this national level. And then the final one is on the kind of local level guidance counselor kind of problematizes national competitiveness and raising the educational level as aims, but kind of there's still kind of tendency to kind of adopt this view that we can see our data. So next slide, please. So here here we kind of have these more practitioner level examples where practitioners find this employability emphasis very problematic and kind of see it as kind of intervening with what they would like to see in the process, like process with their clients. And there are situations where kind of focus on employment is not kind of a realistic aim, and another kind of interpretation would be needed, but then this kind of a employability interpretation is something that they need to negotiate against. So next slide. So here we have these examples that show how these practitioners are kind of sorry about this emphasis, how they are intervening, this kind of emphasis on short-term goals is kind of intervening in the process that they would see as needing more time and more space for client to kind of achieve these like personal development aims, or then kind of realizing their agency also. So let's take next slide. So this is kind of another example of how these employability goals intervene with the kind of work processes. So they need to kind of address these with their clients, and they are kind of invited to adopt this kind of policing role and controlling role, and that threatens the trust between the practitioner and the client. And then we have in the next slide, I guess we have an example of this. So they are really conflicted on the practitioner level on this kind of dimension, and it's actually in our data set with those who are working in public employment services. It's very dominating this kind of a topic. It comes up all the time, how to solve this conflict. Okay, let's go into the conclusions.
I think the next one is this one is better, I think.
Yes. So what we kind of have found are these threads that run through these different stakeholder positions, and then we find employability as something that needs to be negotiated, and kind of policymakers are maybe there's a little bit kind of different views, and maybe a kind of a disconnect with the kind of policy and practice, and what the practitioners are facing is something that is not kind of recognized on the policy level, maybe. So do you want to continue, Mira?
Yeah, and perhaps just a few words about the kind of like the first starting point that we aimed with this article, that we wanted to highlight the idea that since also Maria mentioned, or who was it, that in Finland we have this kind of, for instance, ohjaamos or this kind of holistic views on career guidance and counseling, but they still do this work in relation with the employability, and sometimes it doesn't work. Like it's not the whole story that everyone needs to be employed, and sometimes the employability aim is so strong that it kind of has a negative effect on the impact process as such, if we talk about the individual perspective. So in that sense, I think that we will highlight in the article these kind of entanglements that are like affecting negatively on the work that are taking place or which is taking place in the practice. But of course, it is so that we have some examples in the data when they kind of put together in a positive way, that the like seeking the employability also affects the guidance processes and helps the people or person in the guidance like to see other holistic aims too. So it's not like only criticizing these kind of employability aims, but the idea is to show the kind of power they have in the work. And then another fact is that we really do not have good ways to evaluate these processes. So we don't really know what kind of impact we are seeking, and if these aims and outputs and outcomes and inputs, if they even are made to match. Like they might be like aiming for different things, and if we are not like evaluating or making those recognizable, it's really difficult to see if the career guidance and counseling works as it should be. And I think that is the we have already one article published in this same data in the local level, and there we kind of try to show that we don't have these kind of impact processes, so we don't really know what they are aiming at. So yeah, I think this is like, it's a research article, but we also have a point in this and it is something that we want to show, that the impact processes are not evident. But we would like to also discuss these and also these kind of reflections, if you have these same like ideas or comments from your own country or your own studies. Did we take our time?
Yes,
Yeah,
I think
Yeah.
You perfectly use your time.
Thanks.
Any question, comments? I'm also checking if our third speaker is available, but I can't see her. Anyhow, we have time for a few questions.
If you want to stop sharing, we'd be able to see participants a little better. Thanks. I might just start with an observation. I think these kind of conflicts are definitely replicated in many countries and lead to really challenging work environments for the guidance practitioners as well, and very difficult to square that. And sometimes I wonder about the ethical aspect of I'm also working on a training program, a master's program for guidance counselors, and so we're telling them how to work ethically, and then they might end up working in a place where they really struggle to bring those values into the workplace when they work with clients, and that's really challenging. I'm just wondering if you were to kind of reimagine then policy and ways of working, like if we want policies that are informed by a critical perspective, what would that end up looking like in relation to these kind of employability services? So maybe a name change is needed as well, so that the employability piece isn't quite as central. I don't know. Any thoughts on that?
Well, there's data from different places, but we have been in another paper have been working with the same data from public employment services, and there I think the key issue is that the roles are kind of such that involve like very different tasks. So there's the kind of a policing and kind of an official role in kind of putting sanctions and placing sanctions and kind of operating as a kind of a police. And then there's a expectation of being a supportive, holistic person that you can talk about like anything. So I think on the organizational level, there should be a kind of clearer division of labor, because we need the kind of administrative processes as well, and we need this kind of so more clear talk about what and also communicating to the clients that what is actually the role, and the very skillful practitioners who have this dual role, they kind of open up that I have this role, and then they kind of align with the client and kind of externalize their other role, and kind of are very, very clear about different structures and circumstances that are their kind of real circumstances that are surrounding, and then they can kind of engage with the client. So I think that's one practical issue.
Thanks, Tony. Any other question? Oh, Roxana, do you want to come in?
Sorry, my microphone was off. Hello, everyone. Thank you for the presentation. So I'm new to your project and not really from your field of expertise. I'm here because I'm the leader of a young researchers group, and I'm planning to organize a mentoring program for the PhD students in our group. And the topic that you're discussing is very interesting for me, since it seems to be a disconnect between the number of PhD students that are graduating every year and the job market. And I don't know, there's no one size fits all for this kind of things. But I guess that from legal point of view, I think that it would make our job easier if there would be some kind of incentives for industry to be more involved in education. For example, incentives for companies to hire young researchers, for example. For a while, this existed in France. We had the legislative measure that was called the Dispositif Jeune Docteur, so young doctor, which exempted the company of taxes for 2 years for hiring someone in a research and development position, which basically meant that company was paying peanuts for hiring a researcher, which first of all incentivized companies to create a research and development position and to do some research and to hire doctors. Now this disappeared this year, so it's going to be even more difficult. Also, I noticed that what helped keep the market aligned with, or the formation, or let's say, offer in the universities with the market quite aligned is always having a partnership between industry and the university. The university I studied in France had events every year with the industry to make sure that they recruited students for future jobs or for internships, and to make sure that the school was proposing subjects that were aligned with the market needs. I don't know if this is useful for what was discussed before. As I was saying, I'm not really from your area of expertise.
Yeah, I'm not sure how it relates to our topic, but I was hearing kind of that there's need to kind of for guidance career practitioners to work in this kind of in between different phases and create links and kind of create these networks and maintain networks. So it's a broader role in that sense.
Exactly. Create some legal incentives for the industry to get more involved, so that the universities stay linked to the needs in the market. So this way,
I'm just want to say that probably we need to stay on the track and concentrating on the topic, because obviously there are a million of angles, but we are here to discuss career guidance policy. And then the last speaker was in the call, but then we lost her again. So as we have half an hour left trying to check. So we lost her again. Okay. Because then it means that probably we are going to postpone the last presentation from today, and if there are more very short comments remains, then including Roxana or the others, then go ahead with those. But then try to concentrate on the role of lifelong guidance policy, because I think, Tony, what you are describing goes back to the origin of what we call vocational guidance. I mean, vocational guidance as an occupation was born to facilitate the supply and the demand side of the labor market. And this is why we call career guidance. So we always work in the career domain unless we are bringing in other type of guidance like family support and many other elements. I'm not denying that these exist, or addictology counseling, what you are also providing in Ohiamu. But then once you establish a public employment service which primary mission statement is linking the labor supply with the labor demand, we start blaming these institutions that they are doing their job. So that doesn't it mean that probably career guidance should be established in different domains like education, social inclusion services as well, where the practitioners are not under a pressure like in a TE in the case of Finland. Jasmira, if you have a quick answer to this, please.
Yeah, it's just a short comment that I have been thinking that too, that I think that the key problem is also how we define the career guidance in those practices and policies, like how it's not only aiming at the person to be employed, but also about skills and so on. So sometimes the skills and knowledge is kind of under pressure to be kind of excluded from the guidance policies because the only aim is to be employed and also like quickly, as fast as possible. So in that sense, I think that it's also a question like, what do we mean when we talk about career guidance and counseling, and how do we define that in those policies? And I think that Ohjaamo is a great example of this kind of that you can put together different aims for career guidance and counseling. But there's also the question like that's for young people, and in Finland we don't have these kind of policies for adults, although they are under 30, but still anyway. Yeah, and I think that that relates also to Roxana's question that what are we talking about when we talk about the links between career guidance and counseling and the work, like how we can put them in dialogue so that career guidance and counseling is not only to be employed in the future.
Also, the market is evolving very fast and jobs are changing a lot, and it's difficult to offer career guidance when some job profiles are changing in, let's say, 10 years. That's not the length of a whole career.
Yeah, and Petra was adding to the chat and how we are defining career. That's also clear, and then the other domains than only describing wage work. Maria, you have a comment.
Yeah, it was rather an observation that, well, we have this tension between career guidance and the need to have holistic, comprehensive interventions around it. And then we have faced the risk of stretching the definition of career guidance maybe too much. What is career? And I would add, what is not a career, as long as we can speak also about lifelong guidance. Well, what is left? If we extend the definition of career as everything that happens in between work, family life, consumption, environment, climate, digital. So I really have a problem with how far shall we go when defining career, and what are the expectations from the career guidance once we have a definition of what we are looking for.
Okay, as I'm also teaching guidance professionals, and then I think we all have our professional heroes in history of career guidance. I like what Krumboltz was saying when he was criticized by the American Psychologists Association, that what he provides as career guidance is a quick fix. And he was very proud of that he provides quick fixes and then supporting people like. So I think I don't want to see guidance professionals who behave omnipotently and they believe that they are empowered to deal with all type of social inclusion and then family and addiction problems, because then the reality is that guidance and counseling has very different fields. And then going back to the one-stop shop, what in Finland you call Ohjaamo, it's basically the concept, or you have, Petra, the same in Ireland, when you are bringing together different type of professionals. So working as a team, and then the team members know what they are capable to do so. Okay, we are almost around the end of the time, and most probably we are going to miss the last presentation this time, unfortunately, due to technical reasons. So I'm looking around if there are any other short comments, unless I have one more really quick technical slide. Just go ahead, please. It's Liz, right?
Hello, and thank you for the presentation. And sorry for my English. It's a long time since I've been speaking English, talking from Copenhagen. I'm a lecturer in for master students, and I think your topic is very interesting. I also worked with it in some occasions during also teaching. And according to career guidance, we have this broad career begrepp. We see it in a very broad manner, like it's including everything in life. And according to EU, we have career guidance, lifelong guidance, going in also to support our society competition worldwide. And it's interesting how we can apply ethics into the topics you're talking about also in your PhD, because when EU and the guidance, the function of guidance is supported by employee. And when we need to get into the whole begrepp, sorry, I don't, the whole term of guidance, and at the same time, the guidance is a function of how our countries able to make them in the competition with the other countries. Can you understand what I'm telling? I know I'm very bad at my English right now, but it's a big question about how can we apply ethics into this, because how do we see the whole person and not forcing people in to just have a job to have a job, which is the topics of some guidance, especially in work centers, job centers, etc., can be the risk of that, especially in my country. And how do we cope with the broad term of career, and at the same time the ethics, and when the policies, they are counting in guidance as an instrument for competition, the countries also in EU. Give that, does that make sense? Because
Well,
I think we have all,
yeah.
we have the power.
Because of the time, if I just try to paraphrase what you are saying, my understanding is that you are highlighting the importance of human resource development and the role of career or lifelong guidance within human resource development and competitiveness. But the good news is that in different certain policy documents, that the very fresh Draghi report, these sentences are there. So we already had webinars when we actually talk about the labor productivity role and the human resource development role of career guidance was not in a detailed way highlighted today, but I think you are having a nail. So it's really highlighting an important piece of career guidance interventions, which also link with the competitiveness of certain countries or the European Union as such. I just try to summarize what you are saying, if I'm correct.
Sorry. Yeah, because it's when we see the function of guidance, and we are hired by, for instance, the government, and we are hired to do a function to support people and the guidance and the employment. And sometimes I think people need to be more aware of the ethics, because if we are focusing on human resources to support employment, to support getting jobs to people, to support the competition, the countries, in between the countries, to support EU, for instance, towards Asia or India or other countries, then how do we both have the ethics of the guidance and we are doing the function of guidance as we are supposed to from our employees, and the cross field of this, because we need to get forward to support our countries, and we need to get to support our individuals, which we are guidance. I think Tony is nodding. I hope you understand what I mean. I stopped now,
Yeah.
but
If I may comment, I think it's kind of that we could have this kind of authoritarian system where everything is kind of like very effective, and we have some idea how to push people towards employment. But then we don't have kind of a sense of clientele. So we need professionals, and I think we need professionals that are able to judge and are able to kind of talk back to some policies. For instance, in public employment services, there are kind of policies that these professionals find very troubling and kind of problematic. And it's not about kind of that they want to do like totally holistic kind of support, but they want to kind of operate in a slightly kind of more long-term and sustainable manner, and they have kind of a view of that in a sense, and they see that these kind of, for instance, measuring outcomes and ranking employees in the public employment service who has kind of produced most kind of placements or in some services or labor markets, that these are counterproductive or can be counterproductive. So I think our societies rely on professionals and for a good reason. So there's no clear answer, but I think it's more complicated because we don't know about the clientele and know about the local environment if we don't have kind of people working on the street level and kind of have sense of the kind of a street level.
Okay, thank you both for your comment. I think you are talking about basically a continuum which is between the workfare state and welfare state and the collapsing welfare states around Europe. But we have really running out of time. Boris has one very short comment, and then I'm going to say hello to Farid because we have no more time to finish it.
Very interesting conversation. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
One comment, general. I feel that I am in the past, somewhere in industrial society. We are speaking about teaching mass of humans with no differentiation, with no individual approach, and blah, 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 blah. Teaching for something which exactly known. My question is, what period of time we would like to implement our results? If project is 4 years, 1 year after project, it will be outdated. Trust me, I am from IT area. We have innovation each month. It is impossible to predict career path for a year for our employers. Trust me. And one last comment: why do we need to employ everybody? So there is such a task. I'm not sure that everybody first would like, to do it, and the society will have some benefits from it. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Boris, for these very useful observations. Now we are.
Sorry, that's a great critical sort of rhetorical question nearly at the end to finish off. Sorry, Tibor, go ahead.
Or takeaways. We have a life for work or a work for life or vice versa. I just want to say a welcome to Farid. Unfortunately, due to technical reasons, he was not able to join earlier, but now we are running out of time. So can we take it into granted that during the next webinar, you're going to be one of our first speakers?
Hello, everyone. I'm sorry I had to go outside and find a spot here because I had a technical issue. But of course, yeah, I will try to be more ready, I guess, for next time. But of course, I shared the slides. We can share the slides also. Yeah, I really am sorry about technical issues that I had.
Yeah, thank you. We are happy that you are here. No problem with that. One more slide what we really want to share, which are about the next steps before we close today. Just try to share this one. So what is coming? First of all, I think it's important to note again that we have a website, so you can follow the website. Also, you can sign up for the email correspondence, and we already have the LinkedIn profile. You see here one of the evaluation survey of the network. We're going to circulate this by email after the discussion. So we're happy to receive your comments. I mean, the whole network as such. And what we already know, that was a conference in Manchester. That was actually a kickoff conference. Petra was there from this working group. And then some of the presenters were asked to prepare their papers. So the book will be published as a first outcome of the COAST activity. The position paper we had discussed this morning, end of September, early October, will be also available. I think it's a useful reading to understand where are the departure points of the whole network and what we are eager to do. And for the next year, two events are in the pipeline. One is about a summer university, going to be in Dublin Trinity College in August, and the other one is a Porto conference of the network, where I was asked to tell to everybody that the funds will be limited, so don't count only on the COAST activity, that people will be able to travel. And precisely in working group 2, which is about policy, we are looking for volunteers and happy to continue this type of discussion where we want to identify the subtopics. So there are actually already 5 topics of the activity at the COAST level, the action level, and we want to focus on subtopics in policy design, and they should end up either with contribution to book chapters, what the activity going to produce in the next couple of years, or different type of journal articles, and then it's really up to us what type of journals we are addressing. Personally, I would be happy if we would consider also some of the policy journals, because we keep discussing within the guidance forums, career guidance forums, that guidance looks as isolated or standalone, but I think it's on the other hand important for labor administration, education administration, and so on, to get notice that these professions here and how can guidance professionals support their work. So these are the very, very short piece of information for the end of the discussion. And then we're going to publish the slides as we agreed. We'll try to upload also the discussion to the YouTube. Also, the COAST activity has its own YouTube channel, so you can sign up and you can follow this information. And then I'm now just one sentence for those who are not here. We have more than 120 participants in this working group. These meetings are open for everybody, for the 120 people or even more of them. So even if you are not presenting, just feel free to come to this discussion. After this first webinar, we're going to set most probably a second date. Now we already have the first presentation, we're going to call for new ones, where we're keeping the focus on career development and the policy, and then the interaction between the two. So thank you very much, first of all of the presenters today, and all of the audience, and all of your questions, and hopefully see you very soon.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Okay, I just stopped the